Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host for today. We are talking UFC 327, headlined by Jiří Procházka and Carlos Ulberg. We're going to be breaking down 4 plays here on the show today. Now, listen, we are coming off a profitable evening last weekend, and we were able to cash in on our 4% best bet play, which was on Virna Jandiroba at minus 120. She went out there, she dominated, cashed us in, and let's bring that momentum right into this weekend because I have a massive slate for clients this weekend. Now, I have 2 5% max bets. I never do that. That's something I rarely do. Over the last 7 years, I've only done that 2 times, having 2 5% plays, and both times we cashed both 5% plays. So I feel great about the spots we're in right now. I do have those 2 5% plays locked in, as well as 2 other plays. So I'm probably going to have, again, nearly 6-7 plays. Huge slate for me this Saturday night. So if you want to become a client, link down below. And with that being said, let's dive into the main event of the evening between Jiří Procházka and Carlos Ulberg. Now, you've got Jiří Sig at minus 120 on the comeback here. You've got Carlos Ulberg at plus 100. Now, you got Jiří here, who is, as we all know, a very unorthodox fighter with power. He's really going to be bringing that unpredictability to the cage, and that's really what he does good. You know, he's able to go out there, able to create chaos, make it a mess, and he has the power and that unorthodox style that just gives opponents problems, and that's what he wants to do: get in the pocket, create the chaos, and look for those opportunities. Now, he is not very technical sound, really what he does, but he has his own style, which again makes him unpredictable, but very tough to really prepare for as well. And he's willing to kind of get in and step into the fire. Now, one of the biggest issues here I do see on the Jiří side is the fact that he's very, very hittable. I mean, this is a guy who's rocked, wobbled, hurt, even in wins. A lot of times you got to come back after getting hurt multiple times, and that's what he does. He'll come forward, he'll have his chin on that center line. He, is willing to kind of get into harm's way. And now he's facing a guy in Carlos Ulberg who is a elite level kickboxer, and that's really where I think there are opportunities for him because he is a very clean, striker, has great distance management, does have some power here. And Jiří is going to look to crash the pocket. He's going to look to get into the face of Carlos Ulberg. But I do believe with Jiří moving forward, being aggressive, I do believe it favors Carlos Ulberg in this spot here because the awkward movement is there for Jiří, but he really lacks defensive awareness. I mean, this is a guy who is willing to step into the fire here. And the 2 things I do think that really do help Ulberg in this spot, and I think the first is being the fact that he has incredible footwork. I mean, that is something that I don't think is talked about enough on Ulberg. Yes, he has that elite level striking, but the footwork is there. He mixes it up. He's really light on his feet. Landing shots, getting back out of range here. And I think that even when you have somebody like Jiří coming forward, I think that he's able to, throw a check hook or land a nice body kick or mix it up, get, skirt to the outside, look to land the shots again. I think Yuri's going to struggle really getting a beat on him just because he is so light-footed as well. And plus you add in the footwork for Ulberg mixing in with the slick counter striking because again, Yuri's going to come forward. And that's really what Ulberg wants. He wants the action. He's okay with you firing action because he believes in his counter striking. And I think him being light on the feet, finding opportunities to land, and I think he wins in those exchanges. And although Ulberg is the older guy, he is 35. You've got Jiří, who is 33, but the MMA mileage is like not even close. I mean, you've got, Jiří has massive MMA mileage and he's been knocked out multiple times. He's been in multiple wars, took on a lot of damage. And it's also why we love Jiří. Jiri's a guy that, is exciting. He's going to bring the fight. He's going to, make it exciting. He has exciting fights, exciting every round he's in. He's just willing to bring that excitement there. And the fresher fighter on Saturday night is, at this point in their career, is going to be Carlos Ulberg. And I think Ulberg is the better striker between these two. I think he's far more defensively sound, between these two. And I think one of the other big things that he's going to be able to land on is Ulberg's going to be able to land those leg kicks. And one thing with Jiří we know is he cannot check leg kicks. He doesn't even attempt to check a leg kick. So I think that's really where an elite level striker, elite level kickboxer like Ulberg is going to just absolutely chop away at the legs of Prochazka, who, at times just he doesn't really care to take those shots. There's times that's why it makes him kind of blitz forward because he's unable to check those leg kicks. And I think that's where it's going to open up. Then you mix in the clean counter striking of Ulberg. I think there's a lot of problems there for him in that spot. And also you got to look at Jiří. His last fight, I thought, even though a win was a bad showing, I thought it was really a bad showing. He fought Khalil Roundtree, and, Roundtree was probably up, 2 rounds to nothing going into that third round. And pretty much Khalil death-gassed. He got tired. Credit to Jiri. Yes, he was landing shots and he was able to kind of, pick him apart at the end. But really, Khalil's output, his defense, his striking all fell off a cliff. And Jiri just pushed the pace and was able to get that finish. But if we're being honest here, let's be very honest here. Khalil Roundtree is like a glorified journeyman fighter. The best thing he ever did was get knocked out by, Pereira in the fourth round. So I don't really put that as high, but the fact that Khalil, who is not very technical, does have power, but is not very technical, I think a very technical striker in Carlos Ulberg is going to find a lot of success, possibly that early knockout, but I do believe he does get the victory. He wins the title. So give me Carlos Ulberg plus 100 to get the job done. Next one you're going to talk about is going to be Azamat Murzakanov. He is minus 205 in the comeback here. We have got Paulo Costa. He is plus 160. And they got Murzakanov here, who is 16-0. 12 of those wins do come inside the distance. In the UFC, he is also 6-0, and 5 come inside the distance. So we know we're getting from this guy. He's aggressive. He's going to come forward. He's going to pressure. He wants to cut that distance, get into boxing range. He believes in his striking. He believes in his power, and he has the ability to kind of get in there and find those kill shots. Now, you got Costa on the other side here, who has definitely had some mixed results, over his last, few fights. He's 2-4 over his last 6 fights, and he's had some really flat performances. There's been spots where, he missed his weight, doesn't look good, doesn't seem interested. There was just a lot of, rumors about outside the cage, personal situations going on. So there were those things that were going on that I think, definitely are somewhat of a concern. But if you look at really who he has fought, I mean, he has fought the elite level guys. 5 of the last 7 fighters he has faced were former champions. So again, he is facing the elite level guys here, and even coming off probably the best performance that he has had in his career against Roman Kapilov in his most recent win. And that was where Kapilov, high level kickboxer, has some power, can mix it up. And really Costa looked like the old Costa, a guy who's going to bully forward, get aggressive, look to attack. And he went out there and outlanded, Kopylov 99-48 on significant strikes, including a knockout. Now, there are issues on the Murzakanov side, especially when you're talking about a guy who was a minus 200 favorite here. And I think the first being the fact that Murzakanov is very low volume. This is a guy that, yes, there's been spots where he's been able to push the pace a little bit, but for the most part, he's just relying on the one big shot. He wants that one big shot. He believes in his power. He's just going to hunt for it. He's not going to set up his combinations very much. He's going to throw everything with big time power, and that's what he's going to rely on. Now, it has worked for him against some lower level guys, but this is absolutely a step up in competition here for Murzakanov at this point here. So relying on that one shot, it's got to happen for him, or I don't think things are going to go well for him. And you even have Murzakanov in his most recent fight against Alexander Rakic, was a fight that, we actually bet Murzakanov in that spot. I believe it was like a pick-em price tag. And he went out there and knocked out Rakic in the first round. So it was a nice opportunity. We cashed. It was great. But if you go back and watch, it was over 3 minutes into that first round, and Murzakanov landed 3 significant strikes, and that's including the knockout punch. So he landed 2 significant strikes prior to the knockout, over 3 minutes into that first round. That's not a good look here. He only threw 8 punches. It's just a guy that just doesn't really, he's looking for that one big shot. But if he doesn't land it, you're going to see guys that are going to start to pull away on him. And that could be something where Costa is going to take advantage of. The other issue for Murzakanov is the fact that his cardio is suspect. This is a guy that, is not economical with his gas tank. He's, throws everything with 100% power. He's going to throw, he's going to throw, he's going to throw. And, he's got flaws in his game, but if that fight goes and extends, he gets sloppy. You've seen him, in any fight that's extended, he's winging shots, throwing shots out of place, and he's just looking to rely on that one big shot. If he doesn't get the kill shot again, I do believe Costa can outpace him, outpressure him, push forward. And the other part here, and I think is an issue here on the Murzakanov side, is the fact that Costa is very durable. This is a guy that's only been KO'd 1 time in his professional career, and that was against a prime Israel Adesanya. And I think this is the spot where he can kind of weather the early storm, and then you can see Costa starting to pick up the pace as the fight wears on. And I do think that, I do favor Costa's cardio. I do favor his volume. I do favor his work rate. He's a younger fighter here also that, he's 34, and you got Murzakanov is going to be 36 137, and also the higher strength of schedule here for Costa. So give me Paulo Costa here, minus 160. I think this should be probably a pick 'em price tag here on both sides, but I do like the plus money here on Paulo. So give me Paulo Costa plus 160 to get the job done. And the next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Tatiana Suarez. She is minus 150 in the comeback. We have Loopy Godinez. She is plus 130. Now, back in 2019, Tatiana Suarez was one of the most hyped female fighters in the UFC. She was undefeated, had elite level wrestling, had fantastic takedowns, just great top control, was dominating opponents, getting them down, dominating, wrestling them. And, she was able to, find victories. And then the issue for her was then she had a lot of health concerns, injury. She couldn't really stay healthy. She was out for, I believe, a year and a half, 2 years, whatever it was, came back, had 2 nice victories, and then got injured again and just has not been able to stay healthy. And then she came back after those last 2 years, 2 years off, and she came right in to a title fight against Weili Zhang, one of the best female fighters maybe ever. And, credit to, Tatiana trying to, in the first round, she was able to get a takedown. But after that, it just kind of fell off a cliff here. I thought Tatiana might have a better performance there, but it was really tough to really bully someone like Weili, who was just absolutely a brute out there. And Weili outlanded her 53-12 on significant strikes. You saw Tatiana was 1 for 15 on takedown attempts. So not very good showing for her there overall. She gassed out outside of that first round and a half, and it just was an ugly performance from her. Then she came back and faced Amanda Lemos, which, not the greatest performance. She did get the win, but again, not, a little bit shaky of a performance. But with that said, Saturday night, I do think that this is a great stylistic matchup for Tatiana Suarez to really rebound and get back on top here. Now, you look at Loopy, she's scrappy. She's decent everywhere. She's not great at anything. She's got some decent boxing, some decent wrestling. She can mix it up a little bit there overall, but she makes a lot of mistakes. And that's, I think, the biggest issue here for her is that, fight after fight after fight, we're seeing her just make terrible mistakes. And somebody who just, when she should be striking, she's wrestling. When she should be wrestling, she's striking. And she just doesn't really make the right decision making. And if she's going to make bad decisions on the wrestling side of things, Tatiana Suarez is going to absolutely capitalize on that, get the takedowns, find opportunities to bank rounds, win positionally here. And also, there's not enough power, I think, from Loopy that's really going to keep, Tatiana, at distance. I think she can crash the pocket. She's going to be able to look for those takedowns, and the path to victory is there, because I think she's going to be able to really utilize her size, get the takedowns, bank the rounds, and that's where he's going to be able to find a lot of opportunity. Because we even look at really for Loopy, you have Mackenzie Dern, who is the current champion. Mackenzie Dern does has elite level grappling, terrible wrestling, and even in that spot, Dern was 2 for 5 on takedowns against Loopy, and Dern has an 18% takedown accuracy, and she was able to bank time and get takedowns. And I think that's a bad sign if you're looking now at, at Tatiana Suarez, who might be one of the best wrestlers in the division. And then even our girl, Verna Jandiroba, who cashed us at 4% last week, she got 2 takedowns with 6 minutes of control time. And both those fights with multiple takedowns, her opponent took her down multiple times, she lost. So Loopy, that's a spot where I think kind of can really set up that game plan here for Tatiana. Go for those takedowns, get the takedowns, look to win positionally, because I could kind of see this fight playing out kind of how the Verna Jandiroba versus Tabitha Ricci fight just happened, where, Verna can bully her. Verna could use her size, take her down, smother any kind of offense that Ricci can do. And I think that's really what Suarez can do here to Loopy, get the takedowns, control positionally, bank the rounds. I think this is a great buy low spot here on Tatiana Suarez. So give me Tatiana Suarez minus 150 to get the job done. And the last one here is going to be Randy Brown. He is minus 122 on the comeback here. We've got Kevin Holland. He is plus 102. Now, this one here, you've got Kevin Holland, long, rangy fighter overall. The guy's got, good grappling, a very slick submission game. You leave an arm or a neck out. This guy is absolutely able to go out there and find those opportunities to get the submission. The biggest issue and the massive red flag here on Kevin Holland is the fact that he is just one of the most unreliable fighters in the UFC. I mean, you just don't know what Kevin Holland you're going to be getting here, and that's a big issue. He is just very tough to trust here at this point, especially in his career. He's a guy that really seems like he's just showing up for a paycheck. He's just showing up to just, and at this point, his checks must be pretty large. He's had tons of fights with the UFC, multiple contracts, big fights. He's people, fans love the guy. So, just what he says, what he does in the cage. So he's getting a nice paycheck. He's taking them. And he has said openly, hey, I'd rather fight some weaker fighters than, go on any type of title run, because he's looking for checks. And that's a big issue here. He's taking fight after fight after fight. He's moving up in weight, moving down in weight. There's a lot of moving parts to this. And, he took 5 fights in 2025. He was 2-3 over that span. Over his last 9 fights, he's 3-6, and he has beaten some low-level guys. I mean, he's beaten Mikhail Olenjaychuk before Mikhail went to Fighting Nerds. He and Mikhail was training in his garage, and that's real that he was training in his garage. Ended up beating him then. At that point, Gunnar Nelson, who really isn't even a fighter at this point and was on a 2-year layoff coming into that fight, Holland beats him. And then the other one was Vicente Luque, who is another guy who's had multiple health issues, multiple concerns, and really on a massive downturn. And Kevin Holland was able to find the victory there. But, outside of these lower level guys, I don't think the motivation is there for Kevin Holland. I don't think that he has really any, fight left in him to really push forward here. And I don't think he really cares, to be honest. I just don't think he cares. And while Randy Brown on the other side does have some flaws, I do like his process. I think his process to the fight game is far better, really than Kevin Holland at this point. He's going to fight to a game plan. I think he's the better technical striker between these two. I think, if he fights behind his jab, I think he can mix it up. He's got good boxing. He switches his stances very well, targets different parts of his opponent very well here. I like if he can chop away at the legs of Holland. I know that, Brown definitely is a guy that also struggles checking leg kicks, but I think he can do that. It mix in some takedowns. Holland is weak on takedowns. You just got to watch out for being submitted, but he can bank some time a little bit there too. And I think that the footwork, really of Randy Brown's going to cause problems there for Kevin Holland overall. And I think another issue here for Kevin Holland is the fact that he was dropped twice against Pillow Fist Daniel Rodriguez. Now, Rodriguez doesn't really knock anybody down, but he was able to knock Holland down 2 times. And I thought that's a very bad sign here for a guy who kind of leans on his durability a little bit here. So I think it's a little bit of a concern when we're looking at that overall. And, prior to the fight before where, D-Rod did drop Ponzinibbio, who has an absolute glass chin. But prior to that, it was 2020 was the last time that Rodriguez knocked anybody down. So I think that's a bad sign, I think, for the durability, for the wear and tear that Kevin Holland has gone through here. I do like Randy Brown here. I think he's going to be able to push the pace, land the more impactful shots, outwork Holland, and maybe even win positionally. So give me Randy Brown -122 to get the job done. So there you have it for my plays for UFC 327. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. I do have, again, those 2 5% plays locked in. And again, 4 plays are already in there. So take a look. We'll be adding to that. Now let's have another profitable evening this Saturday. We've got more events coming up. So make sure you lock in next week with me. And let's get it done this week. And let's cash.